I'm Rick from Cartridge Classic Cars. On this video, we're back on the 69 Nova, and on this video, we're gonna be working on the front end. Mostly, we're gonna be working on installing the subframe assembly. We are gonna mock up the driveline in this car, being that it's gonna be an LS conversion with a 6-speed manual transmission. So we already know there's gonna be some either cut and done on the subframe. There's gonna be some cut and done on the floor pan. We're not gonna fine tune everything. This is more the rough cutting phase and the mock-up phase. The owner also wanted a rack and pinion from, I believe it's Flamin' River. Don't quote me, we'll see when we start installing it. So all this stuff that we're putting on the car with headers and everything else from different companies, I already know that we're gonna have a bunch of issues, and now's the time to do it before, you know, everything's final done on the body. Without the fenders, the inner fenders, and the radiator support on the car, it's gonna be easier to get in here, you'll see, and work around it. Now, if you've seen previous videos of ours, we did install on the last 70 Nova build, the Detroit Speed Hydroform subframe assembly, complete with pretty much a rack and pinion. The owner went with a big block conversion, but they offer an LS model and everything else. Now, saying that right there was one kit by one company designed to incorporate everything. We did mock everything up and found some minor issues with it. But again, some stuff that just you plan on in the process and very easy to work with. This one already, when the car arrived here, I already know we don't fit on the oil pan clearance. The headers aren't even close, and we have major steering angle issues with the rack and pinion assembly. So we are gonna address that now. With this subframe assembly, what has been done already, you can see it's in a green etching primer. And if you watch my videos, we never use etching primer. So the reason why this is in a green etching primer is, one, it's been sandblasted. It's actually the subframe assembly off another car, as the one that came in this car was bent, damaged, and rusted out. And the work that was gonna take to put into it and straighten everything out, we were able to pick up this donor subframe assembly off a original car, and that was in much better shape. But we did completely sandblast it. Normally, you could see in the video, we would put everything in epoxy primer. I did also, once it was done sandblasting, the owner requested that he wanted all the seams re-welded and gone through just to strengthen up this subframe assembly. So we did that in the bare metal phase. So that's why we initially stripped everything down. We got everything to good, clean, fresh metal, and then welded everything to make sure there was no, and also to make sure there's no damage or hidden rust everywhere. Now, saying that, why we put it in etching primer versus the epoxy primer is we're unsure, the owner's unsure right now, if it's gonna be powder coated, what other top coating, if it's gonna be a chassis paint or anything else. So we already know with all the fabrication we're gonna have to do with the motor, the oil pan, and all that, we are gonna have to cut, grind, weld some more on this chassis. So for us, it's easier to just spot in some etching primer from a can to keep everything from just the bare metal from rusting. Whereas with the epoxy primer, if I knew what chassis paint we're gonna use and we were able to top coat it, well, we could then scuff up the areas and get everything cleaned up, then kind of just put a fresh coat of epoxy over the scuffed surface before our top coat process. But there are some chassis paints that like to be applied directly over bare metal, or some of the chassis paints like to use their own version of epoxy primer. So this etching primer is only on there in the idea that we are going to remove it all off again. This whole thing will be sandblasted down the road, and that's the only reason we are using etching primer on this circumstance. So sometimes in the restoration world, there is some waste and some things you have to redo it. If this did not need any fabrication work on it, and this was all bolt-on factory original Nova stuff, this wouldn't really be an issue. We would probably either go send it straight to a powder coater, have it come back and we install it, or one, we just go top coat it now. So like I said, on this video, that's what we plan on doing. We plan on getting this subframe under this Nova. I will say, you could see on this video, we did install doors, and we do have the whole back end of this car loosely clamped together, everything, it's dialed in for enough for the first go around. Now, the reason we've done that, I've said on our videos that I'm not gonna weld anything on the back end until the front end's on the car. Sometimes we put the front ends on the car. With this one, it just worked out really well that we were able to clamp everything together, make sure the mini tubs work. That's not gonna be on this video. So we are gonna finish the mock-up of the driveline and everything else. We're probably gonna get the whole front fenders, hood, and everything on this car initially on this video, get everything test fit, and then down the road, that will be a second video. So if you see this car together and we're not talking about it, it's not welded up, and that's what we're gonna look at in the future. So let's get to working on that subframe assembly and start getting the motor, everything, the engine, everything else, the driveline in this car, and see what issues we run into. So stay tuned.
So step one in the whole process, we have the subframe connected to our shop crane. We're going to lift it up. We're going to slide it under the car. Chase is obviously helping, as a job like this is a whole lot easier with two people. All we're basically doing is aligning the new floor holes to the subframe body mounts. We did put the Detroit Speed solid mounts in this car. I believe I've said it on other videos that those solid mounts are the way to go. The polyurethane and rubber mounts I don't feel are as good in the long run, and it really doesn't give you any benefit for these cars and everything else. So like I said, we're going with the Detroit Speed solid subframe mounts. We have everything lined up with our new floor pan, and then we'll go ahead and square everything up, take some measurements, verify that the subframe is sitting in a very good tolerance. But since it bolts up, that is a very good sign that everything is in straight. Now if you get the subframe off kind of slightly cocked or crooked, that will lead to front end sheet metal alignment issues down the road. So it's good to verify that the subframe is straight on this car. So we are putting the Flaming River rack and pinion on the subframe. It did barely fit in the old subframe. Now the old subframe was really, damaged, tweaked, and all that, but this one, it's just ever so slight up top, where the subframe, it looks like it's a little bit wider. That is the problem with a lot of this bolt-on stuff. There is almost no complete perfect bolt-on equipment with the aftermarket parts, because you run into tolerance differences even on these subframes. Like I said, I don't feel this subframe is bent. I just feel it was 1/8 of an inch out a little bit further in that front section of the subframe, where if this is a factory Nova, you bolting on a factory car, you would never notice the difference. So what we did, we just relief cut the subframe on that one side. You saw we hammered it over, and now we're able to bolt in the subframe. I will come back later once everything's mocked up, once everything's done, and then we will start actually welding up some of the seams and everything else on the fabrication process of the subframe. I believe we are going to weld in this rack and pinion down the road. Obviously not the rack and pinion, the bolt-in part itself, but the Flaming River bracket that right there we're bolting in, we can weld that in, make it look a little bit more cleaner, and then we'll also probably end up welding the engine mount. So here's our LS3 and TR660 6-speed transmission. We're just going to bring it into the shop. Again, use the shop crane to unload it and then go straight into the car. So with this one, we did actually have to remove the rack and pinion assembly just to get the oil pan and everything to drop in there with the clearance we needed. It was just that extra room. As you could see with the transmission, the engine in general, this is a lot larger of assembly going in than a traditional small block Chevy and a turbo 350, turbo 400 transmission, or even a 3-speed like a Saginaw in this car. So saying that, we did drop the transmission down a whole lot more. We did end up slowly jacking it up and cutting out the actual floor pan. We will go and show down the road, but it won't be right now, how we end up filling in the transmission tunnel on this car. It obviously needed a lot of clearance, like I said, for the 6-speed transmission. So down the road, we'll tackle that. Right now, what we're worried about is we're worried about engine driveline angle, the subframe assembly, and the front sheet metal to make sure there's no issues. And then we're also going to tackle right now with the header install, the actual rack and pinion assembly clearance with the steering shaft. So we have the column also bolted in this car. We are putting on, as you could see, the headers, like I said, and what we need to do now, we need to make our steering shaft and make sure we don't have to dent the headers going from the rack and pinion assembly to the actual column that the owner's going to use. We'll show the outcome at the end of the video of that whole mock-up process, and again, everything's just tacked in place. We did, like I said earlier, drop the motor down to get everything aligned better with our driveline angles, but we'll go over all that at the end of the video. And down the road, after we pull the motor out, is when we'll do our final weld on everything else, just to make sure there's no other issues. Right now, what we are going to start tackling is the front sheet metal install, just to make sure that there's no clearances with the inner fenders or anything else that we might not have thought of. These Novas do have a relatively large engine bay for the size of the engine, so I don't really foresee that, but we have to put the front sheet metal on anyway to go ahead and align the doors with the rear sheet metal and just get everything where we can start finalizing the whole rear end of this car with the final weld up. So saying that, we're going to take one, you saw the radiator support. We are using the factory original radiator support, which is in really good shape for, you know, once it gets sandblasted and cleaned up. All these parts right now, you could see they still have some of the stickers on them. They're still in eco. We are just literally going to bolt these parts together loosely with the bolts, the inner fenders to the fenders. We are going to put them on the car. We're going to start adjusting in our, you know, tolerances of our bolts. We might have to drill out a few holes, open up some areas just to give us a little bit more adjustment, as these front end aftermarket parts, they're great alternative for rusted, dented, and really heavily damaged parts, but they are not a complete direct replacement. As far as I wouldn't take an OEM quality fender off a car and put one of these on there. It's just, they're not that great. But the alternative compared to what we have for this car, this build, and what the owner's trying to do, when these parts are done, you're never going to know. They're going to fit really well after a little pulling, prying, and some cutting on a couple gaps. Again, we'll go over some of the issues with these fenders at the end of the video that we run into on the initial test fitment. But in general, they did fit really well. We still need to get the hood and the hinges and everything else on before we could do our final adjustment on exactly where the fenders need to go. We also will go back through when the front sheet metal is completely assembled and then readjust the doors to match the profile of the fenders, and then do that handshake between the fenders and the doors, a transition period. So we'll adjust the doors for that. This, I feel, is very important before welding up the rear sheet metal. I know a lot of other shops out there only do from the firewall back and don't touch the front end of these cars. I personally feel the front end of these cars are a lot harder to install, align, and gap than the rear of these cars. So if you're not doing the whole entire car, you're leaving yourself open for a lot of issues down the road, and you'll see it in the future. Just the door and fender don't profile right, the hood doesn't line up with the fenders. And it's not just this Nova build. Most of the Novas that we built run into these same issues on the front sheet metal, on the rear sheet metal. They all are about the same no matter what we end up doing. Now, there's some things that we can prepare for, and we've seen in our videos that we could just bend some corners and move some parts just to try to make things better in the long run. But let's go ahead, we'll get this hood on, let's wrap up the video and give some final thoughts on this Nova build.
We're going to go ahead and wrap up this video in the 1969 Nova. As you can see, the car's really starting to come together. We got now the whole entire front end, the drivetrain mocked in place, and now the rear sheet metal. So where that's going to let us be is on the next video, we'll come back through. We're going to start prepping all the quarter panels, the trunk, you know, the wheel houses, everything, the mini tub area, everything back here, and get it ready to weld up permanent, as I'm very happy with the fitments on the doors and all the profiling of the sheet metal in general. Like I said, with other Novas, if you see on the products, this car is a mirror with the issues that we had with the 70 Nova. We know the door gap right here gets a little bit tight. Just you could see where the stampings are. It's good here and it's good here. This door will obviously have to be bent a little bit as the back of it is sticking out just a little bit when you look down the rear of the car. Now, and then the fender is completely lined up with the front of the door. Saying that, we are still not going to rack the door, bend the door at all at this point. We are going to make sure we get the quarter panels final installed. Again, I said it earlier in the video, we're not going to do any gapping or any major cutting as much as we want to fix everything until everything is finalized, because that might create more issues down the road. Looking at the other side, the door looks a lot better. Same thing on the last video with the 70 Nova we did. The passenger side stamping seems to be a lot better on these Novas. I will say the TR660 transmission, the 5-speed in it, so the driveline on this car is out of a 2010 Camaro with the LS3 platform, and the transmission, you could see we did rough cut everything in here, and we did have to make a lot of clearance to get the engine in. Main thing too, what we did was we had to lower the engine on this car. The cowl, we did use the original upper cowl panel. That seems to fit well. And looking at the fenders, same thing again on the last car. I had to cut the driver's side fender just to get the hood closed. But the hood is closed. Did use the original radiator support. I think that worked out. I really do like using these pieces if they're not rusted. I think, you know, a good quality piece, really, this is the center of the whole entire front end, so it held everything together. So like I said, 6.2 LS3 bolting kits, we did have to lower the mounts. We were at, you know, I think it was 5.5, almost 6 degrees of driveline angle, so we did bring it down. Everything right now is still just tacked in place. So what we have to do is just maybe notch the bottom frame, just come down, because the oil pan fits right now, but we have to put the gasket on it and we want to give a little bit more clearance. So just a good 1/16 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch on the bottom, and it is gapped in clearance on the cross member, but it would have been for the offset motor, where this motor is now centered on the car. So again, we'll address that when we start pulling the car apart after body's done. Right now, we're just mostly worried about the major fabrication as far as making sure everything fits. You saw we got the headers to fit and the steering to fit. And honestly, with this car, we were worried about binding and everything else with the Flaming River rack and pinion. Saying that, I mean, it's tight, but everything does fit really well. So in general, that about wraps it up for the video on this car. Like I said, it was a short car, a short video. We did a lot of work off camera. There's still a lot more work to come. I know the car looks like it's almost complete, but like I said, we'll pull the back end off. We'll focus on the next video on completing that portion of the car, welding it up permanently, and then we'll work our way to the roof, and then we'll follow the steps that we normally do on all of these builds. So stay tuned for that. If you missed how the car got to this point, it's been coming together really fast. We've been really just throwing parts at it, but we're not sacrificing the quality of the build. So that's very crucial on what we're doing. So again, I'm Rick from Carthage Classic Cars. Check out our Facebook page, Carthage Classic Cars. I do post a bunch of pictures on this car, sometimes a week plus in advance. The videos are a little bit behind with the editing and everything. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I'll see you on the next video.